More on the story, we can bring in our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Doug, on Tuesday we had U.S. General Scott Miller stationed in Afghanistan, who really said civil war is certainly a path that can be visualized, that should be of concern to the world. Just how bad is the situation in the country?
You have the possibility of an impending military takeover of the capital, Kabul. You have not just Miller, the current commander of the U.S.-led forces in Afghanistan, but you also have a former retired Army General, David Petraeus, telling the Washington Post in the past few days that civil war is a stark possibility. We're back to the future here. Do you remember when the Taliban controlled Afghanistan in the 90s? They were only driven out in 2001 with the U.S.-led invasion. And since then, the only thing that has essentially kept the Taliban at bay, and not even because in many cases they've had to be repelled from towns they've taken over, is heavy assaults, airstrikes that is, by both U.S. and NATO forces from the sky, lending crucial, vital backup to Afghan forces on the ground. That's the only thing that has kept the Taliban at bay. And even you might go back 2015, right, at, when there were still plenty of troops in Afghanistan. You had Kunduz was taken by the Taliban. They would have held it. They were only repelled by those airstrikes. So it's not being overly negative. It is not being overly pessimistic or catastrophic or alarmist to say it is an absolutely horrible and getting worse by the hour, by the day, if not the hour, security situation. The Taliban have taken over dozens of districts. Anywhere the estimates range from about 50 to 90 since mid-May. And how many districts are in Afghanistan? Just under 300. So that gives you a sense.
Sorry, I just want to ask you, so what can the Afghans do now?
Very little. They can do what Ashraf Ghani, the president, was at the White House meeting with Biden last week. What Biden can't give him is what he perhaps would need, even if he's too humble to ask for it, that the U.S. forces remain for a little bit longer, at least in substantial numbers to lend the backup. He can't do that. What the Afghan security forces are going to try to do is put on the bravest face they possibly can at a time when their morale is plunging, when a lot of Afghan units on the ground, army units, are surrendering, literally throwing their weapons into piles as the Taliban surround them and head up to the central gates of cities. And they're appealing. They're appealing, something that happened in the 90s. Remember when warlords had these fiefs all over Afghanistan, especially in the north? The central government is actually appealing to these warlords and to these local power brokers throughout the country to join the Afghan central forces, the Afghan army, to join forces with them, team up in trying to hold the Taliban at bay. You could see that is a measure of just how desperate the central government is right now.
And those peace talks taking place in Qatar?
Nowhere. Really stalled. Stalled is a horrible diplomatic word. They're going nowhere right now. The Taliban are making positive sounds, positive noises, saying we want genuine peace. We want a genuine Islamic system, is what they say. The big catch here has always been what happens to women's and minority rights.
It takes the back burner.
You hear the Taliban say it. What do the Taliban say? Well, we will ensure that, all the rights of women and minorities are preserved within the framework of an Islamic form of governance. At the same time, they said facilities will be provided for girls to go to school and women to be able to work. What does that mean, facilities? Will they be able to go to public places? Will they be able to work in the government? Will girls be able to go to schools and walk alone without a male relative? Everything is so vague as to be completely negligible. So the peace talks are nowhere, and the audacity of what's happening on the ground right now and the violence that we're seeing on the ground basically negates anything that we hear coming out of those peace talks in Doha right now. The reality is the Taliban are taking those towns in the north, which is significant because that's not their heartland. The heartland is the south and the east. And last time in the 90s, the north is where, is not where they started. It was the last place they went. This time they're starting in the north, not their heartland. That says it all. It says that they're confident, they have swagger in their step, and right now they think that the perhaps Afghans' near-term future is in their hands.
Doug, thank you very much for that. Douglas Herbert there.